This video I actually wanted to do about the feasibility of using a small power station or medium-sized power station to run your off-grid cabin. Can you run an off-grid cabin on a small to medium power station? I mean, let's face it, not everybody wants to go out and build their own power station. They just want to buy a unit and they don't want to spend a ton of money. So I think I was looking at about $700, between $550 and $700, depending on the components that I bought. And I'll drop a link down below to the video on that do-it-yourself system using a marine battery box. I think it's super simple, folks. Put a battery in, hook it up, throw an inverter on it, and you got power, right? Then I got to thinking, could you run your cabin off of one of these systems? And I do see people trying to do this, and I thought I would do a real-world test for you to demonstrate how one that I've been given to review. So yes, folks, this is a review video, but not really. Stick with me. Don't run away just yet. We will be talking about this power station, and I want to give you the full rundown of what I did, because I think I pushed it. I think I pushed it pretty hard. And there was some confusion, and I'm gonna call those cons when we move forward. So you're gonna wanna see this because I think it's important. If you can get a less expensive power station, is it really worth it, and how does it work, and will it power up your off-grid cabin? Or can you use it for overlanding, that kind of thing, right? Can you run a little refrigerator, one of those portable refrigerators like my Smitty built, and will it last very long doing that? And I'm gonna introduce you to this big monster, and we're gonna talk about the feasibility of using one of these for powering your off-grid cabin, or for camping, or overlanding, all that kind of stuff. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is this. It's an AllPowers S2000. I will put a link down below for you to check it out. And these are actually not really expensive. They run around $800 or $900. So don't quote me on that, but I will drop it down below and let you know what it is. But they're not much more, if at all, from what it would cost to build your own portable power station. And the one I built was with a 1280 watt hour battery. This has a 1500 watt hour battery. So I got this unit to test it out. And honestly, I don't always like doing reviews. Unless it's applicable to my channel, I don't really want to do it. And so, for example, somebody offered me a robot lawnmower. I thought, the heck am I going to do with it? It ain't going to mow the grass out at the cabin, so I'm not interested. Not my bag of worms, as they say, right? But when I do get offers, the ones that I choose are usually something that has to do with off-grid power, camping, overlanding, cabin stuff, or sawmilling. That's it, right? Chainsawing, woodworking, whatever. Those all make more sense to me. But when AllPowers came to me on this one, I was actually already doing a bunch of tests on power stations. And I had done a test with a Jackery 550, which actually isn't much smaller than this, and my Golden Mate battery, and I ran 5 days. I ran that refrigerator on full freezer mode, in perfect conditions. I mean, honestly, getting 5 days was amazing. It probably shouldn't have run half that. But that's another story. We got lucky. So if you put one of those together and you only get 30 hours out of it, folks, I understand that conditions can be perfect and prime, and I didn't expect them to be during that test. They just were. So guess what? They weren't when I ran this guy here. So what have we got here? We've got an AllPowers S2000. When I first got this unit, I thought, man, this is kind of a sturdy unit. It's got, I think these are hard plastic handles, but they're hard, they're strong. The whole unit, it weighs a good amount. It probably weighs 30 pounds. I haven't weighed it. It has 4 120 volt AC outlets on the front. So that's a 120 AC 60 hertz outlet. So pure sine wave. And I have actually seen the pure sine wave on this AllPowers unit tested. I watched a guy that was testing these, and he got a near perfect, in fact, as good as I could tell, perfect sine wave out of this guy. So pure sine wave, it really is. And in past videos, I've talked about how a lot of them aren't. This one does seem to be pure sine wave. It also has the 12 volt cigarette lighter port. See what I did there? Car port, they call it. Carports? Carports is what you drive your car in. It's like an open garage. But it has one of those. It's got USB Type-C And it has regular USB ports as well. 4 regular USB ports, 2 USB Type-Cs, and then we've got input for solar panel. XT60 input. So it's got 2 fans. It has a 100 to 240 volt, 50 or 60 hertz AC input on the back for charging. And this unit will allow up to 400 watts of input charging off of that AC side. I wasn't going to give you a review if I didn't push this thing really hard, and that's what I've done. So, what did I do? Well, let me pull my notes up because I think you might find this interesting. So, a couple things. First of all, when I got the unit, it was about 69% state of charge, which is normal. You know, you're usually looking in that 60 to 70% range. Lithium batteries like to be stored there, then you can charge them all the way up if you're going to use them. But if you're going to store them, you want to store them for about 6 months, and they often store them around 70%. So it was at 69%. I plugged it into the solar panel that they gave me, which I will show you in a minute. It's a 200 watt solar panel with MC4s. I like that. I've mentioned that in past videos. Plugged it in and I got 130 watts right away, and then I got 140 watts charging on this when I repositioned the solar panels. You know, 140 watts on a 200 watt panel seems a little low, but angle of the sun, all that kind of stuff, probably to be expected. I did plug in, well, it's not sitting in here right now, but I did plug in another solar panel that I have, another quad fold 100 watt panel, and I got 80 watts out of that one. So, you know, was the AllPowers 200 watt solar panel putting out all that it could? I can't tell you that. I got 140 watts out of it. Seemed to be fine. And that's the problem with these foldable solar panels, and all solar panels, folks. If you don't know this, you get a 100 watt solar panel. If you get 100 watts out of it, that means it's perfectly aligned to the sun in perfect conditions. All the stars are aligned. You've done everything right. You found a 4-leaf clover and all is working well in the world. You get 100 watts. Most of the time, you really don't. And it's just the nature of the beast, right? That's the way things are. So did the panels give me as much voltage as they could for a 200 watt panel? Maybe, maybe not. We need to do some more testing on that. But they did the job. That's all that really matters to me. Did they work? Yes, it worked. Now, so I got this thing all charged up. Let's get back to the point, right? And I had to take notes, folks, because this took a while. I hope you appreciate that. On the 18th of June, so that's about 2 weeks ago, at just before 4 p.m., I started the test and I put my 75 liter Smittybilt dual zone refrigerator, and I had it with one side of it on freezer and one side on refrigerator. So more realistic environment. It was in a 70 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit environment in our pantry, plenty of circulation room, but no air movement. And it was relatively full. So the way you would actually use it. And I ran it from about just before 4 p.m. on the 18th until 9 p.m. And I noticed something interesting. And this is my first con for the AllPowers. Now, there's lots of pros, folks, so don't run away when you see this con. But it is something that I think you need to be aware of. At 9 p.m. at night, after running for 5 hours, it showed 100% state of charge. Well, that's no way. It was also showing at 9 p.m. that it was pulling 28 watts. Well, I mean, even if it only pulled 10 watts in 5 hours, that's 50 watt hours, so it's less than 100%, right? I mean, 10% would be from a 1500 watt hour battery. I need to remind myself that so I don't do some bad math here. 10% would be 150 watt hours. So that would be a third of that, which would be 3.33%. So it should have been sitting at 97%, but it was sitting at 100. Very strange. The next morning, still running, I hadn't shut it off. The next morning at 4:37 a.m., yes, folks, I get up early. It was at 75% and not pulling any watt. And then at 10, it was 60%, 0 watt, 3:38 p.m. And I took my notes pretty stringently, folks. 46%, and I'm dropping in some of these here so that you can see them while I'm talking. Then on the 20th, 4:38 a.m., we're at 11%. At 6 a.m., we were down to 9%. So 38 hours, approximately, of running that refrigerator on this unit. Now, I want to make one note. After 12 hours, I switched it from the 120 volt pure sine wave inverter over to the carport 12 volt. It ran the rest of the time on the 12 volt. And I did that because the inverter is going to take up more power. So why waste the power when you can run it off 12 volts? I wanted to test the inverter. I did that for 12 hours. It ran pretty well, used up 25%, assuming the stated charge is accurate. But I think by then it probably is. It seems like at 100% it sticks a while. And in any case, 38 hours, it did really well. There's a couple things that happened during that time, though, that completely confused me. Now, these are not cons. They're kind of pros with a twist. It would often show 0-watt draw, and it's doing nothing. And I actually took my Jackery out the next day, and I tested the two side by side. I pulled the voltage off of the carport on this, which should read 13 volts according to the literature, and it was getting 12.65, 12.66. Well, I mean, that's still plenty, but it's certainly not 13 volts. When I plugged into my Jackery, I was getting 13 volts. Okay? The Jackery was non-stop, no problem, 13 volts, right on the money. The other thing with the Jackery is when I pulled in the 12 volt connection from the refrigerator, it immediately started to draw power, and it never seemed to stop drawing power. And the Jackery will actually charge up the battery that's on that portable refrigerator because it has a 6-hour battery in it. It will charge that battery up and continue to run the refrigerator, and I never see the power drop on the 12 volt side. Is that a good thing? Well, let's talk about that. This unit, much like another unit I have, has what I would call an eco mode. If the refrigerator isn't sending a power request, in other words, if the refrigerator is not trying to draw power, then it shuts off. And it sits at 0 waiting for a voltage draw. And if it gets a voltage draw, boom, it'll kick back up and start powering up whatever it is that's trying to get power. Now, my big inverter out at the cabin does that. My old Ames inverter did that, and my SunGold Power did that, thereby extending the life of the battery. That's a pro. It's a good feature, but you need to understand it. So it's kind of a con in the sense that if you didn't know that, it will confuse you. It certainly confused me. I had my multimeter out. I had various power units out. Finally, after getting a hold of AllPowers, and they responded right away, I might add, they explained to me that it does have that eco mode, and so if there's no draw, it just shuts down. I think that helped. So, where does that leave us? So we went from the 18th to the 19th. Okay, now what did we do after that? So what we did after that was I decided to run it again, this time on the 12 volt only, after charging it back up again, full charge. Now I want to note that I didn't get a full 400 watts on the input. I got 364 watts. That's what I was seeing. So it allows a max of 400. I was getting 364. Could it have been the plug that I was plugged into? No idea. But that's what I got. So it says 400. I didn't quite get 400. On the 21st of June, I started the test over again. 6 a.m., it was 100%, drawing 0 watts. 7:07, 100%. 8:20, 100%. 11:23, 100%. It had been drawing 23, 24 watts. So again, it read 100% all the way until, well, 3:45. Then by 5:30, when I checked it again, it was down to 80%. Again, drawing 27 watts, and on noon on the 22nd, we were down to 63%. We went all the way to the 23rd at 8:26 a.m. at 11%. So let's look at the time on this. So we went from the 21st to the 22nd to the 23rd. We actually ran over 50 hours on 12 volts running that Smittybilt refrigerator. That's not bad. 2 full days plus some. That's without any charging. It's without putting a solar panel on, without putting a wall port in, without putting a 12 volt plug-in from your vehicle in. All that, 50 hours, and I was down to 11%, and then I put it on the wall charger, and that's when I was seeing the 364 watts coming in. Okay, so is that running your cabin? No, it's not, so let's get there. On the 24th of June, I then headed up to the cabin with a buddy of mine, Tim. You've probably seen him in some of my cabin videos. Tim's a good guy. We headed up to the cabin, and on the evening of the 24th, I decided, you know what would be a good test? Run the refrigerator off of this thing and see how long it would run. Now that is not a full-size refrigerator like you would think of in a house, but this is a fairly big refrigerator. It's bigger than any you'd ever seen in an RV. It's it's probably over 4 feet tall, maybe 5 feet tall. I think 24 inch. There is no freezer unit in it, so there's no compressor cycling for the freezer, but it can draw a lot of power. In fact, when I hooked it up, I saw 732 watts coming off of this guy when it first was running. Now, I'd already cooled it down, spent a couple hours cooling it down on cabin power, so that's important to acknowledge. I didn't get it cool on the AllPowers S2000. I had it cool already, plugged it in at about 7 p.m., and then I proceeded to run this for 30 hours before it finally drained down. That was on the pure sine wave inverter. So 30 hours running a cabin refrigerator, that's bigger than an RV unit, full time, nothing else ran it. Now, is 30 hours enough to run your cabin on the weekend? No, it's not, but I do think that it's a valid test. One of the things that I noticed is that because of the eco setting on this thing, it would often shut down, go down to 0. And frankly, it sometimes perplexed me because the screen would stay black all the time. And I thought, gosh, is it even doing anything? And then I would hear the fan whir up, and that meant, and, you know, the refrigerator would cycle. You'd hear the compressor on the refrigerator, the fan would whir up, and it would run the refrigerator for a while, but the screen stayed blank. I like that, folks. That's a pro. Don't waste power. So all in all, I'm going to tell you that so far up to that point, aside from the confusion of the eco settings on the outputs on this, I was starting to be impressed. It's a good solid unit. I pushed it really hard. I drew it down that time to 16% after between 30 and 32 hours. So I still had more time to go. Now, could you run a cabin on that? Well, in theory, the first thing you could do is you could plug in a solar panel and run it. Now, that refrigerator was using between 125 and 150 watts whenever it ran. So if you plugged in the solar panel and you got, 140 watts out of it like I was, then it would charge this up whenever the refrigerator wasn't running, but it would provide the power to run the fridge when it was running. So it wouldn't be draining this. And if you had that on there for several hours during the day, you might be able to run that refrigerator all weekend long off this unit. But is that running your entire cabin? Well, no, it's not. So, this unit, would it run your cabin? I'm going to tell you that it will, and here's how. Folks, what you need is a battery. And what you can do, I got one right here I can show you. What you can do, which I'm working on right now, I'm actually charging up a battery that I have here that I'll be talking about in a future video. But this is a 2560 watt hour, 24 volt battery. It's 100 amp hours. And I'm just running my little charger here at 5 amps to get it charged up. Now, you wouldn't need a puck for that because it's already 24 volts. So it's going to be providing 24 volts. And as long as your unit can handle that 24 volts, you're good to go. No problem. And I'll put that down in the link, what your specs are for this, and I'll give you a link to the specs. So, now, I did mention overlanding, camping, all that kind of stuff. What if you don't have solar panels or there's no sun? Maybe it's a cloudy day or you're on the road. How does it do plugged into the back of your Jeep? Because in my Jeep, I've got a 12 volt car port, cigarette lighter port on the back of my Jeep. So I went ahead and I plugged this into that port. Now I know, I've heard it all. They're inefficient. They're not the best way to charge anything. Take them out, put in thicker wires, run all these other things. I get it, but let's be honest, folks. Maybe a lot of you are like me and we're not going to rewire our Jeep. We just want to know, how will this perform plugged into the back of the Jeep? And I can tell you that it pulled 90 watts consistently for 5 hours of driving and was back to 69% at the end of that drive. And it was probably more like 4.5 hours of driving. That did pretty good. I was impressed. Charged it back up to 69%. So if you were out camping, overlanding in particular, and you spent the night somewhere, this would run everything that you needed it to run. And then if you plugged it into the carport and took off driving down the road for half the day, you'd be just about well, you would be charged back up. I was going to say just about, but that's only assuming that you dropped it all the way down to 16% in the first place, which you're not going to do running a portable refrigerator overnight and, you know, charging up some cell phones or tablets, or, you know, the wife's using it to curl her hair or whatever wives would use power for. So, I mean, all in all, folks, honestly, I'll drop some pictures in here comparing this to the Jackery. It's not a lot smaller than a Jackery 550, frankly. So I like the fact that the power is built into this thing the way it is. 2,000 watt inverter, 1,500 watt hours, all kinds of charging ports. And you can get these. The S2000 kit comes with this guy. So now you've got a 200 watt solar panel. Let's move this thing out of the way so I can show this to you. This one's a 4-fold or quad-fold panel. It puts out, apparently, 200 watts. It's rated to put out 200 watts. It's actually a nice satchel size. And just for fun, because I did this before, if we have a look at this, this is my Jackery 100 watt solar panel, which is wider and almost as long. So when it comes to packaging, the Jackery is taller. They're both really close in width. They're both the same kind of solar panel, and you could use it in all kinds of other applications. At $800, if you can get one of these for $800, that's not bad considering what it would cost you to build one yourself. So $550 for a Jackery 550, or $800 for something with almost 3 times the power and 4 times the inverter power. It's going to run a lot of things. And like I said, my refrigerator cycled up at 724 watts. It would have kicked out the power on that Jackery immediately. This thing took it in stride and still had more room to go. And I've seen these run over 2,200 watts. So, good inverter, good power, good battery source, all in all, good round unit. I'm going to drop a link down below for you so you can check that out. I think it's worth looking at if you just want to go out and get a power station and you don't want to buy one that's twice that cost for the same amount of power. Check the AllPowers out. So far, I'm impressed with it. So there you have it, folks. Yes, you can run your... So there you have it, folks. Yes, you can run your... Let's do a bloopers rule. Let's do a... I can't even say bloopers reel right. Let's do a bloopers reel. Let's do a bloopers reel. Yes, folks, you can run your off-grid cabin for a short time on one of these. I'm not going to say you can power your cabin forever on a small to medium power station. This one doesn't come with, you know, the option to add a battery to it, but we all know we can add batteries because if you watch my channel, I've shown you how to do that already. So, yeah, you could do it. I wouldn't want to try to live with one, but I'd absolutely use it at my cabin. And folks, when I say off-grid cabin, I'm not talking off-grid mansion or some great big monstrous, you know, 4,000 square foot, 10-bedroom super cabin in the woods that you can power your Tesla off of. I mean, come on. I'm dealing with real cabins, you know, the little ones that normal people build. So anyway, folks, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I appreciate your watching. I'll drop another video over here for you to check out. And who knows? Put your comments down below. You want to see a bloopers? Let me know. Thanks for watching, folks. The old Jarhead out. Bloopers rule. Bloopers rule. Bloopers reel. Bloopers rule. Can't even speak today. Oh, well, whatever. That's a wrap.